The story opens with a mother named Tuko speaking on the phone with a friend about the challenges of raising a child alone. Tuko firmly asserts that the only person she needs is her daughter, Koto, and insists that she has no desire for a partner. Sometime later, while Tuko is out with Koto, they are forced to rush back to their house due to a bathroom emergency. In her haste, Tuko drops something, which is noticed by a man lying on a woman's lap in a nearby park. He retrieves the item for her. Tuko thanks him, her heart skipping a beat as she notes how helpful he was and how young he looked. However, she quickly dismisses the thought, reasoning that a man lounging around the park in the early morning is not the kind of influence she wants in her daughter's life. Surprisingly, Koto mentions that she likes him, remarking that he looks like a character from an anime she watches. The following morning, as Tuko leaves with her daughter, she encounters the same man again, this time with a different woman. It turns out he is their next-door neighbor. The man recognizes them, but the interaction becomes awkward when Koto innocently asks if the woman kissing him is his friend and questions what they were doing. Realizing he is late for class, the man panics. Tuko quickly pulls her daughter away, but not before screaming at him to go to class. She berates him for being a student who behaves this way, remarking that she cannot believe such a trash person is her neighbor. Left stunned, the neighbor wonders if he really is trash. He admits to himself that skipping class and drinking all the time probably makes her accusation true. However, his reflection is cut short when he immediately receives a phone call from yet another girl. At her workplace, Tuko continues to dwell on the situation, unable to believe someone like him lives next door and worrying about the bad influence he might have on Koto. Her stress is compounded when her employer approaches her, commenting on how young she is and offering to treat her to lunch, while placing his hand on her shoulder, making her visibly uncomfortable. Later feeling unwell, Tuko retreats to the washroom only to overhear colleagues gossiping about her status as a single mother. They complain about how difficult it is when single parents half-ass their work. Although her employer had told her not to push herself so she could save energy for her daughter, Tuko refuses to let her child be an excuse. She returns to her desk and attacks her tasks with renewed intensity. After finishing work, Tuko runs to pick up Koto from kindergarten before it gets too late. Upon arrival, she notices a couple picking up their child together, a sight that briefly stings. However, Koto interrupts her thoughts by declaring that she wants to be with her mommy forever. Touched, Tuko hugs her daughter. On the way home, Koto wonders aloud if the neighbor will play with them, but Tuko sternly tells her that she is not allowed to interact with him. As the story progresses, the toll of working, housekeeping, and parenting begins to weigh heavily on Tuko. She reflects on her exhaustion and reiterates that she is done with men, feeling that relying on others or falling in love would only cause more problems. Lost in these thoughts, she eventually falls asleep. The next morning, Koto wakes her mother to ask about breakfast, and Tuko realizes they are running late. They eat and change in a frenzy, but as Tuko reaches to open the front door, a wave of nausea hits her. She feels like throwing up and suddenly faints, collapsing right in front of her daughter. At that exact moment, the neighbor is returning home with another woman. He notices Tuko's door is slightly ajar and hears Koto begging her mother to wake up. He immediately tells his female companion to go home and enters the apartment to find Koto crying and Tuko unconscious on the floor. When he tries to assist Tuko, she momentarily regains enough consciousness to protest, insisting she doesn't need a man's help. The neighbor becomes angry, shouting at her that her stubbornness is making her daughter cry. He picks her up, carries her to her bed, and tucks her in. Before Tuko drifts into total unconsciousness, her last thought is of Koto crying. The neighbor takes charge of the situation. He uses Tuko's phone to call her workplace and inform them she is taking the day off. He then comforts Koto, praising her for doing her best and telling her to take it easy on her mom. Switching into a domestic mode, he begins to cook. When Tuko finally wakes up, she is confused to find her apartment spotless and food laid out on the table. The neighbor notices she is awake and informs her that he handled her work attendance, observing that she has been pushing herself too hard. He asks if she really does everything alone, mentioning that he has a little sister, so he understands the struggle. He advises her that she needs to rely on people sometimes. When Tuko apologizes and explains that she is Koto's only parent with no one to turn to, he tells her that relying on a random, drunk college guy like him wouldn't make much of a difference anyway. He suggests that since she doesn't care about him, she should feel free to take advantage of him. He looks at her with gentle eyes, joking that they are both trash, after all. He examines her condition one last time and prepares to leave, telling her he cooked porridge to help restore her energy. He finally introduces himself as Kusunaga Yuki and advises her to see a doctor before exiting the apartment. Tuko and Koto sit down to eat. Koto is delighted with the meal, revealing that she had asked Yuki to make them omurishi, which he did. As Tuko eats, the kindness of the gesture breaks down her defenses, and she begins to cry, apologizing to her daughter. Some days later, Tuko and Koto visit Yuki's apartment to give him a gift as a thank you. Yuki opens the door, beaming with a wide smile at receiving a present. He accepts it and retreats inside almost immediately, leaving Tuko dumbfounded. She tells Koto it is time to leave, but before they go, Koto shouts Yuki's name, telling him the omurishi was yummy and thanking him for taking care of her mother. Yuki turns back with a warm, genuine smile, says sure, and closes the door. Tuko and Koto walk away with smiles on their faces, enjoying the heartwarming moment. However, the mood is abruptly shattered when they hear a menacing voice roaring from inside Yuki's apartment, screaming that someone is going to be slain. This is it for this video. Please subscribe and support the channel.